The sun drenched the sleepy cul-de-sac in golden light, the kind of afternoon that begged for lemonade stands and lazy bike rides. Birds swooped low across manicured lawns, and sprinklers hissed a rhythmic lullaby against the sidewalks. It was the sort of perfect, still moment that made you forget anything bad could ever happen. 8-year-old Mia Collins, cheeks pink from the heat, giggled as she zipped down the sidewalk on her pink bicycle, her tassels streaming behind her like comet trails. Her training wheels had come off last week, and now she rode with a proud little wobble, the way young riders do when they're just realizing they can fly on their own. She was too lost in the thrill of speed and sunlight to notice the figure watching her from across the street. Karen, perched stiffly in a white rocking chair on her immaculate porch. Karen Callister clutched a clipboard to her chest like a knight might clutch a shield, her lips pursed into a thin line, her sharp eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. She didn't rock. She didn't smile. She simply watched, like a vulture eyeing something small and vulnerable. The instant Mia's front tire brushed the edge of a flowered, a single petal tumbling free from a daisy, Karen's grip tightened on the clipboard. With mechanical precision, she rose from her chair, heels clicking ominously on the driveway. Her motions were sharp, deliberate, like a horror movie villain stepping into the light. Without hesitation, she marched across the street. Mia had barely realized anything was wrong before Karen was towering over her, casting a long shadow that swallowed her in the sunlit afternoon. "You!" Karen's voice cracked through the air, sharp enough to make a crow flinch from a telephone wire. "You have damaged HOA property." Mia blinked up at her, wide-eyed and breathless from her ride. I didn't mean to. Intent doesn't matter." Karen barked, snatching the handlebars of Mia's bike with a jerky tug. "This is evidence of property destruction. HOA regulations clearly state." The neighbors heard it. Curtains twitched, blinds rattled, but no one opened their doors. No one wanted to cross Karen, not after last summer's infamous lawn chair incident. Mia tried to hold onto the bike, her small fingers gripping the rubber grips with all the strength an 8-year-old could muster. But Karen yanked harder, wrenching the bicycle from her hands with a sickening squeal of metal against pavement. The pink bike tipped over onto the sidewalk, a tassel tearing free and fluttering sadly to the ground. "You can't just..." Mia's voice broke, too scared to finish. Karen jabbed a finger inches from Mia's face. "Tell your parents they'll be hearing from the HOA. Maybe they'll think twice about raising a public nuisance." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes. Heart pounding, throat tight, she turned and ran, tiny sneakers slapping the pavement, toward the one neighbor she knew she could trust. Behind her, Karen stood triumphant, clipboard held high like a judge handing down a death sentence. But if Karen had thought today was going to end in her favor, she was about to learn that some fights are better left alone, especially when the child's father is the police chief. Mia's tiny fists hammered on the neighbor's front door, panic blurring her vision. Mrs. Jensen, an older woman with a kind smile and silver hair tied back in a bun, swung it open within seconds. One look at Mia's tear-streaked face and crumpled posture told her everything. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Jensen gasped, pulling Mia inside without hesitation. "Come in, quick." Across the street, Karen watched with narrowed eyes, the clipboard clutched even tighter now, her knuckles whitening. She paced back and forth like a caged animal, muttering under her breath and occasionally snapping pictures of the damaged flowered, the single fallen daisy, now drooping pathetically in the sun. Inside the house, Mrs. Jensen knelt beside Mia, smoothing her hair back. "Tell me what happened, sweetheart." Mia stammered through the story, her words tumbling over each other. The flower, the shouting, Karen grabbing her bike. Mrs. Jensen's lips pressed into a thin, furious line. She had seen Karen terrorize the neighborhood before, but targeting a child, that crossed a line. "Where's your phone?" Maya asked suddenly, her voice shaking. Mrs. Jensen immediately handed over her cordless landline. With trembling fingers, Mia dialed the one number she knew would make things right. 3 rings. A heavy, familiar voice answered. "This is Chief Collins." "Daddy." "Karen took my bike," Mia cried, words spilling out in one terrified breath. "She said I broke flowers, and she's gonna fine you, and..." The line crackled as the chief's tone changed instantly, ice sharpening his words. "Stay where you are, Mia. Don't go outside. I'll be there in 2 minutes." The call ended with a sharp click. Outside, the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler hiccuped and fell silent. The world shrank to a tense, pulsing moment of waiting. Karen, meanwhile, wasn't finished. Seeing Mia disappear into Mrs. Jensen's home only seemed to fuel her fury. She stormed to her own front yard and erected a grim little display. Mia's pink bicycle laid out neatly on the lawn, a handwritten cardboard sign next to it that read, "Evidence of property destruction. Awaiting parental response." She planted a row of orange traffic cones around the bike, like a miniature crime scene, and snapped photo after photo with her phone. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, phones raised to record the absurdity. Whispers floated through the sticky air. "Is she serious? That's Mia Collins' kid. Isn't her dad the chief? Karen's gonna regret this." But Karen either didn't hear them or didn't care. In her mind, she was invincible. She was the HOA queen. Rules were her kingdom. Clipboards were her sword. And no one, challenged Karen McAllister without consequences. The faint rumble of an approaching engine stirred the air. Tires screeched at the far end of the cul-de-sac. A black unmarked cruiser rounded the corner, sunlight flashing off its hood like a warning flare. Karen turned toward the sound, squinting arrogantly, ready to unleash another round of HOA authority. She had no idea that she had just picked a fight with the one man who could, and would, make her whole world collapse. The cruiser rolled down the sun-baked cul-de-sac like a thundercloud swallowing the sky. Neighbors stepped away from their windows now, drawn by instinct. Something big was about to go down. They gathered in clusters on driveways, holding their breath as the vehicle came to a stop at the curb. The door swung open with a metallic thud. Out stepped Chief James Collins, tall, broad-shouldered, his black uniform crisp and gleaming under the punishing sun. His face was unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses, but the hard line of his jaw said everything. He didn't slam the door. He didn't rush. He simply straightened his shoulders and walked. Slow, measured steps that sounded impossibly loud in the dead silence, toward the center of the chaos. Karen, standing proudly beside her ridiculous display of cones and evidence signs, caught sight of him. She cocked her head, clipboard ready, her mouth already curling into a sneer. Another parent, she assumed. Another resident to scold and fine into submission. As he approached, she barked sharply, "Excuse me, sir. This area is under official HOA investigation. Please stand behind the cones and await further instructions." Gasps rippled through the gathering crowd. Mrs. Jensen, peering from her doorway, pressed a hand to her mouth to hide a disbelieving smile. Mia clutched her hand tighter. Chief Collins said nothing. No emotion flickered across his face. Instead, he pulled a small leather wallet from his belt, flipped it open, and held it up at eye level. The gold badge caught the sunlight and threw it back like fire. "Police Chief Collins." Karen faltered mid-sentence, her sneer freezing into a twitching, confused grimace. She blinked behind her giant sunglasses, fumbled with her clipboard as if it could shield her. She stammered, voice breaking. "There's been vandalism. Community property destruction. We're handling it internally." Chief Collins lowered his badge with agonizing slowness. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and coiled with iron, "you are currently in possession of stolen property belonging to my daughter. You have unlawfully detained it. You have harassed a minor. And you have overstepped your authority in a public space. Step away from the bike." Karen looked wildly around, but no one stepped in to save her. Phones were recording. Neighbors' faces were grim, expectant. She was very much alone. Still clinging to a scrap of her imagined power, Karen straightened her spine. I was enforcing HOA regulations. She crushed a flower bed. The rules are very clear. Chief Collins took a deliberate step closer. Karen took an involuntary step back. "Are you aware," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "that theft and harassment carry criminal charges in this county, and that obstruction of an officer's recovery of stolen property carries even more?" Karen's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, the iron certainty drained from her posture. The air between them vibrated with electric tension. Chief Collins gestured once, sharply. Two uniformed officers who had quietly arrived behind him stepped forward, their presence sealing Karen's fate. "Return the bike, now," the chief said. And this time, Karen knew she had no choice. Karen's fingers trembled as she crouched beside the bike, lifting it awkwardly by the handlebars like it was a live grenade. The traffic cones she had so proudly placed wobbled and tipped over as she stumbled back, desperate to save face, but looking every bit the guilty villain under the blazing sun. Chief Collins stood perfectly still, arms folded, his expression unreadable behind the mirrored sunglasses. The two uniformed officers flanked him silently, their presence a wall Karen couldn't climb. The neighbors gathered closer, drawn in like moths to a flame. Phones pointed steadily at the scene. Nobody was looking away now. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. Karen, red-faced and breathing heavily, managed to set the bike down at the edge of the curb. Her voice, when she spoke, was tight and strangled. "There. It's returned." A tense, brittle silence followed. Chief Collins tilted his head slightly. "Not good enough." Karen blinked in confusion, swaying slightly under the heat and pressure. "You will apologize," he said, voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You will apologize to my daughter for unlawfully seizing her property and attempting to intimidate her." Karen's mouth opened, and nothing came out. She glanced wildly around, looking for allies among the crowd. But all she found were grim faces, folded arms, and steady, judgmental eyes. No one would save her. She stammered, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry for any misunderstanding." Chief Collins took one slow, deliberate step forward. "Not good enough." The words landed with a force that made even the watching neighbors flinch. Karen's composure cracked completely. The clipboard slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the sidewalk. Her sunglasses slid down her nose, revealing wide, panicked eyes. "I'm sorry," she blurted, voice too loud, too desperate. "I didn't mean to scare her. I just thought. The rules." "The law," Chief Collins said, "comes before your rules." He turned slightly, gesturing toward the officers. "Document the incident. Confiscate her phone as evidence of unauthorized surveillance of a minor without parental consent. I'll be filing charges." Karen gasped, clutching at her chest, like she'd been physically struck. You can't," she shrieked. "I'm the HOA president." One of the officers, a tall woman with a stoic face, stepped forward. "Not anymore." Karen staggered back, her world tilting sideways. She tried to protest, but her words dissolved into a high-pitched babble no one bothered to acknowledge. Chief Collins crouched briefly, picking up the pink bike and inspecting it carefully, as if confirming it had survived the ordeal. Satisfied, he turned toward Mrs. Jensen's house. "Mia," he called, his voice suddenly gentler, threading through the heavy silence. The door creaked open. Mia peeked out, her small face anxious, tear-streaked. When she saw her father holding her bike, her whole body sagged with relief. Karen watched helplessly as Mia sprinted across the lawn and flung herself into her father's arms, the pink tassels of her handlebars fluttering in the breeze. The neighbors erupted into quiet cheers, spontaneous claps echoing against the houses. Karen stood frozen in place, a relic of her own downfall. And she didn't even know yet. This was just the beginning of her collapse. Karen stood in the middle of the street, frozen, her mind scrambling for some way, anyway, to claw back her slipping authority. The neighbors' applause felt like knives cutting into her pride. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was full-blown public humiliation. Her chest heaved with ragged breaths. Sweat trickled down the side of her face, smearing the foundation she'd carefully applied that morning. The clipboard lay forgotten at her feet, and the once pristine cones around her crime scene now rolled lazily across the street like defeated soldiers. But Karen McAllister wasn't the type to go down without swinging wildly. She shoved her sunglasses back up her nose and jabbed a trembling finger toward Chief Collins. "You're abusing your power," she shrieked, voice shrill and cracking. "You can't bring police action into an HOA dispute. I'll have your badge for this. I'll call the county. The mayor. I'll have you fired." A heavy silence fell. The crowd stiffened. Phones tilted higher. This was the moment everyone had unknowingly waited for, the moment Karen completely self-destructed. Chief Collins turned slowly, one eyebrow arched above the rim of his sunglasses. "You want to escalate this?" he asked quietly, almost conversationally. Karen, too enraged to hear the warning in his voice, barreled on. "You're nothing but a bully. I'll sue you, your daughter. The HOA will own your house by the time I'm done." Mia, clinging to her father's leg, looked up in confusion. The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. Even Mrs. Jensen shook her head slowly, mouthing, "She's lost it." Chief Collins shifted his weight, casually removing a small black device from his belt. A body cam. He tapped it once. A soft beep confirmed it had been recording the entire confrontation. "Excellent," Chief Collins said coolly. "I suggest you hire a very good lawyer, Mrs. McAllister." Karen blinked, her fury faltering into stunned confusion. "Whoa. What?" "This," he continued, voice hardening to steel, "is evidence of your harassment, your threats against a public official, and your attempt to obstruct a lawful investigation. Not to mention illegal detainment of a minor's property." Karen's jaw dropped, but no words came out. He wasn't finished. "And since you made it very clear you intended to retaliate against me personally," he pointed to the ring of cell phones capturing everything, "you've just handed me an airtight case of harassment and defamation." A strangled noise escaped Karen's throat, somewhere between a cough and a sob. The second officer approached, politely but firmly holding out a clipboard, the real kind, stamped with official seals and signatures. "Mrs. McAllister, you are hereby served a notice of formal investigation into criminal misconduct. You'll be receiving subpoenas within the next 48 hours. You may want to retain counsel immediately." Karen's hand shook violently as she took the paperwork. The world around her seemed to shrink, the blazing sun pressing down like a spotlight, exposing every crack in her carefully curated image. Across the lawn, Mia hugged her bike tightly, smiling at her father through tears of relief. And the crowd? They weren't just witnesses anymore. They were the jury, and Karen had just lost her case before it even began. Karen clutched the paperwork to her chest like a drowning woman holding onto driftwood. Her mind raced. Humiliation, fear, rage, all mixing into something reckless and volatile. No, she wouldn't accept this. Not from a child. Not from a cop. Not from anyone. As Chief Collins turned back toward Mia, his attention momentarily shifting to comfort his daughter, Karen's hand darted to her back pocket. A gleam of metal caught the sunlight, her cell phone. But it wasn't to call a lawyer. Karen's fingers moved with frantic speed, opening the HOA community app she had admin access to. In seconds, she began typing a furious post, broadcasting a twisted version of events to every resident in the neighborhood. Criminal child damages property. Police chief abuses authority to cover it up. HOA under attack. She attached the pictures she'd snapped earlier, the fallen daisy, the bike on the lawn, carefully avoiding any that showed her cone circus or the crowd gathering against her. It was desperate. It was reckless. It was exactly the wrong move. The phone vibrated violently in her hand almost before she finished posting. Notifications flooded in. Some residents replied with confused question marks. Others, those already watching the live confrontation, fired back in public fury. "Karen, stop lying. We saw everything. She's a child. You're finished. Video footage coming, Karen. Better call a lawyer." Karen's triumph deflated instantly. Like a popped balloon, the hope she clung to shriveled in front of her eyes. Across the street, one of the uniformed officers' radios crackled to life. "Dispatch to all units. Possible cyber harassment underway at scene. Evidence requested immediately." Chief Collins' head turned back sharply. His mirrored sunglasses zeroed in on Karen's pale, stricken face. He saw the phone. He understood instantly. His voice dropped to a level so low, so lethal, it silenced even the murmuring crowd. "Put the phone down." Karen hesitated. Chief Collins took a slow step forward, his hand outstretched. "You are tampering with evidence. You are defaming a minor. You are actively committing cyber harassment right now." Each accusation hit like a hammer. "You will hand over the phone, or you'll be arrested on the spot." Karen's knees buckled slightly. The air seemed to thicken, trapping her in a suffocating bubble of her own making. And still, pride made her hesitate. One last shred of defiance flickered in her wild eyes. You can't arrest me," she cried, voice shrill and broken. "This is just a neighborhood dispute. It's not a crime." Chief Collins didn't flinch. Assaulting a child's reputation, stalking, illegal surveillance, defamation, theft. He ticked each charge off like bullets from a revolver. "Not only is it a crime, Mrs. McAllister." He nodded toward the second officer, who produced a pair of gleaming silver handcuffs. "It's about to be your reality." The second officer moved toward Karen, cuffs ready. The neighborhood watched, spellbound. And Karen realized, far too late, she hadn't just lost a petty squabble. She had declared war and lost everything. Karen's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The world around her was closing in. The eyes of her neighbors, the police officers' calm, professional gazes, the crisp afternoon air filled with the sound of her rapid breathing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was the HOA president. She was supposed to control this neighborhood. She was above this. But now, as the officer's hand hovered near the cuffs, Karen realized something chilling. There was no escape. Not from the police, not from the law, and certainly not from the growing crowd watching with judgmental eyes. As the officer moved forward, her pulse quickened in panic. She had one last play, one final shot at turning this around. A bluff. A manipulation. She darted a quick, desperate look to Chief Collins. "You," she started, voice trembling but trying to sound authoritative. "You can't do this. This is overkill. You're ruining me. You're ruining my life." Her eyes were wide, desperate, appealing to his humanity, appealing to anything that could save her. The officer paused for a brief second, eyes flicking toward her, clearly waiting for Collins to respond. The crowd hushed, holding its breath. But Collins was unflinching. "You've had every opportunity to walk away, Mrs. McAllister," he said, his voice cold, final. "But your choices have consequences." Her chest tightened as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. It wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was a public spectacle. And she was losing. "You're just going to let them ruin me," Karen cried out, voice rising to a desperate pitch. "You can't just take everything from me." Collins' gaze softened, but only for a moment. "You did that yourself." The words were like a knife to her gut. The officer reached for her phone once more, and Karen felt her last shred of dignity snap. Without thinking, she swiped the phone up, clutched it to her chest, and bolted toward the sidewalk. "I'll make you pay for this," she shouted, her voice broken, manic. "You'll regret this, all of you." But it was too late. The sound of her retreat was drowned out by the buzz of notifications, messages piling up on her social media, condemning her, broadcasting her breakdown to the world. Her last attempt at power was now a public display of her unraveling. As she reached the curb, her legs weakened, and for the first time, her mind fully grasped the weight of her actions. She was alone now. No more rules. No more power. Chief Collins didn't make a move. He didn't need to. He simply watched, his face a picture of quiet authority. The second officer stepped forward, gently placing a hand on Karen's shoulder to guide her back toward the cruiser. It was a motion of compassion, but to Karen, it felt like the cold hand of finality. Karen turned, desperation in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "I didn't mean." But it was too late. Karen's legs wobbled beneath her as the officer gently guided her toward the squad car. The weight of her failure felt heavier with every step. She had walked this neighborhood in control, commanding respect. Now she was being escorted out like a criminal, her face burning with the embarrassment of her own unraveling. She couldn't even look at the crowd anymore. The neighbors who had once feared her were now gathering in groups, exchanging hushed whispers, all eyes on her as she stumbled toward the patrol car. And then, just as the officer reached for the door to help her in, Karen heard a voice call out from the crowd, a voice that made her freeze in place, her breath catching in her throat. Wait. Her eyes shot toward the source of the voice. Mia. The same little girl she had terrorized just hours earlier stood there, her face calm, her eyes no longer fearful, but determined. Mia's father, Chief Collins, turned to her in confusion. "Mia, what is it?" Mia held up a small envelope, the edges frayed with use. She stepped forward, walking with an odd sense of purpose for someone so young. It's for Mrs. McAllister," Maya said softly, her small voice carrying with an unexpected weight. She handed the envelope to Karen, her eyes locking with Karen's in a moment of pure clarity. Karen stared at the envelope, confused, reluctant to take it. But the crowd had fallen silent, waiting for the next move. There was no avoiding it now. With trembling fingers, Karen reached out and took the envelope, her mind whirling. She had no idea what was happening, what Mia could possibly want with her now. After all that had happened, why would the girl offer her anything? She tore open the envelope with unsteady hands and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a photograph. It was a picture of Mia's bike. The bike Karen had tried so desperately to confiscate. But it wasn't just any picture. It was a photo of the bike, next to a freshly planted flower in the front yard of Karen's own house. Karen blinked, her heart skipping a beat. Her hands went clammy. On the back of the photo was a single line of text. "I'm sorry for what happened. I wanted to show you what kindness can do." A wave of confusion and guilt washed over Karen as she stared at the picture. Her knees nearly buckled as she realized the truth. Mia had planted those flowers in Karen's yard. Her flowers, because Mia had seen how cruelly Karen treated her. It wasn't a violation. It wasn't vandalism. It was a peace offering, an act of pure, innocent kindness. And Karen, in her blind rage, had destroyed it. Tears sprang to her eyes as the full weight of her actions hit her all at once. She had fought against a little girl's attempt to mend the damage between them. She had let her own pride, her need for control, blind her to the truth. The crowd watched as Karen's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. She felt small, insignificant, a mere shadow of the woman who had once commanded their fear. Karen tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She looked up at Chief Collins, but the guilt in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. "Mia," Karen whispered hoarsely, "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I didn't see it." Mia simply nodded, her face gentle. "It's okay. You'll understand one day." And with that, Karen was escorted into the patrol car, her once unshakable sense of superiority now shattered. As the car pulled away, the crowd dispersed. But something had changed. Karen had lost more than just her power. She had lost her chance at redemption. But Mia had won. In the end, kindness had triumphed over bitterness, and the neighborhood had witnessed the rise of something far stronger than Karen's rules: compassion.